Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. Dr. Ciha Viridian stood frozen. Her silver eyebrows raised so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. The scanning drone hovered above the human patient. Her hand trembled slightly as she stared at the readout, then back at the unconscious alien on the hospital bed. "How?" she whispered, more to herself than to the medical drones hovering around her. "The internal bleedings should have killed him hours ago." Yet, there it was on the screen, the unmistakable signs of vessels repairing themselves, of a body fighting back against wounds that should have been immediately fatal to any other species. The human's body was somehow healing. Earlier that day, Ciha had been in the middle of reviewing patient files when the emergency alert had sounded throughout the research station. As head physician of Arkrad's premier medical facility, she was accustomed to being summoned for critical cases, but the notification had specified something she'd never encountered before: a non-Arkradian humanoid species, critically injured. The emergency bay was awash in the station's characteristic blue-white light, designed to eliminate shadows and provide optimal visibility for surgeons. Medical drones, small, hovering devices with screens that could position themselves anywhere needed, were already swarming as she entered. On the stretcher lay a creature unlike any she had treated before. His clothing had been cut away, revealing pale skin covered with strange patches of dark hair. The most prominent concentration of hair was on the top of his head, short and brown. Blood, a shocking bright red, unlike the green of Arkradian blood, seeped from multiple wounds. Ciha approached cautiously, her analytical mind immediately cataloguing similarities and differences. Like Arkradians, this being had 2 eyes, a pair of arms and legs, and a mouth on his face. But where her own skin was a deep, dark green, a trademark of her species, his was a pale pinkish beige. Where her hair was a striking silver, natural for Arkradians of all ages, his was this curious brown. "It's a human," came a voice from behind her. Dr. Crodo, one of her younger colleagues, had stepped up beside her. "Planetary Security says he was in a lone ship that got into a firefight with Crodarian warriors. 5 against 1, apparently. Somehow, he still managed to land his ship on our world and request help before passing out from his injuries." Ciha froze in surprise. 5 Crodarians? And he survived long enough to land? Impressive. She leaned closer, examining a particularly deep wound on the human's abdomen. "Though not for much longer, I suspect. Prepare the neural scanner. I need to assess the brain damage." "Do we really need to expend resources?" Crodo asked quietly. "This species has no treaties with Arkrad. Technically, we have no obligation to—" "He's a patient who made it to my operating table," Ciha interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I don't let patients die because of politics, Dr. Crodo." The neural scanner revealed what Ciha had feared: significant bleeding around the brain. The impact from the crash had caused the human's brain to collide with his skull, rupturing blood vessels. Blood was pooling dangerously, creating pressure. "He won't survive this," she said clinically, though a flicker of disappointment crossed her features. "But we'll do what we can. Prepare for emergency extraction of the hematoma." "The procedure is too risky," Crodo protested. "We don't know enough about human physiology to—" "Then we'll learn," Ciha said firmly. "Quickly." The procedure was like navigating uncharted space. Ciha worked methodically, directing the medical drones to assist as she carefully drained the pooling blood from around the human's brain. The inner structure was remarkably similar to the Arkradian neurology in some ways, yet alien in others. She couldn't help but marvel at the complexity, even as she remained certain her efforts were likely futile. After 3 intense hours, she had done all she could. The bleeding had been stopped, the pressure relieved, but the damage was extensive. In an Arcadian patient, this level of trauma would have been unsurvivable. They would never have made it to the operating table. "That's all we can do," she announced, stepping back from the table. "Monitor his vital signs and inform me immediately of any changes." The staff dispersed, leaving the unconscious human under the watchful sensors of the medical drones. But Ciha lingered. "You're staying?" Crodo asked, pausing at the doorway. "Someone should," she replied. "The data could be valuable to our understanding of human physiology." Crodo nodded, seeing through her scientific justification but choosing not to comment. "I'll check in before morning shift." Alone with the human and the quiet drones, Ciha settled into a chair beside the bed they had placed him on. This wasn't unusual for her. Having no family and little social life outside her work, she had spent countless nights in the medical facility with critical patients. Work was her life, had been for the past decade. As the night progressed, Ciha monitored the human's neural readings with growing curiosity. The deterioration she had predicted wasn't occurring, at least not at the rate she had expected. The drones continued running diagnostics, and she analyzed the data in real time, comparing it to known recovery patterns of other species. Something strange was happening. The human cells appeared to be regenerating at an accelerated rate. Neural pathways that had been damaged were showing signs of activity. It wasn't dramatic, but it was unexpected. Ciha picked up her datapad and accessed the images from the crash site. The vessel was mangled almost beyond recognition. Twisted metal and shattered glass. The fact that anyone had survived such an impact was remarkable. The fact that this human had not only survived but had been conscious long enough to call for help was even more so. "Who are you?" she murmured, studying the unconscious face. "And what makes your species so resilient?" She continued observing his condition throughout the night, logging every slight change, every unexpected reading. The sun was just beginning to rise over this hemisphere of Arcrad's skyline when she noticed his breathing pattern changing. His eyelids fluttered, and before the morning staff had arrived for their shift, the human's eyes opened. Ciha quickly activated her universal translator as the human began to speak between coughs. My head," he groaned, his voice hoarse. "Feels like I got hit by a bus." Ciha stood frozen, utterly impressed and momentarily speechless. By all medical logic, this being should be dead, not complaining about a headache. The human's eyes, a curious brown, matching his hair, focused on her green face and silver hair. To his credit, he showed remarkably little shock at her alien appearance. "Where am I?" he asked, attempting to sit up and immediately wincing. Finding her voice, Ciha gently pressed him back down. "You're on Arcrad," she explained, her translator converting her words. She paused, looking at the bandages wrapped around his head, still struggling to believe what she was seeing. "I extracted quite a lot of blood from around your brain. I thought you would die." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Someone of my species wouldn't have even survived long enough to be brought to the hospital in your condition," she continued. "The crash alone would have killed most beings I've encountered." The human's cracked lips formed a weak smile. "Humans are pretty tough to kill. It's one of our better features." "Evidently," Ciha replied, checking his vitals on a hovering screen. "Planetary Defense told me you were fighting 5 Crodarian warriors before you crashed here. That's utterly stupid." He attempted a shrug that turned into a wince. "Wouldn't be the first time I've been outnumbered. Though I have to say, they put up quite a fight." He looked at her directly. "I'm Peter, by the way. Peter Kowalski. Since you've seen my brain and all, we should probably be on a first-name basis." "Dr. Ciha Viridian," she replied, finding herself strangely entertained by his casual manner in the face of what had nearly been his death. "Head physician at this research facility." "Nice to meet you, Dr. Ciha," Peter said. "I'd shake your hand, but I'm not sure I can move mine yet." He glanced around the room. "So, where's my stuff?" My communicator, gun, the rest of my equipment. Ciha couldn't help but give a small, surprised laugh. You nearly died from catastrophic injuries. You're on an alien planet, and your first concern is your equipment? Peter grinned weakly. Women are all the same across the galaxy, I see. You didn't even know my name, and you've already left me with nothing. Despite herself, Ciha found her eyes flicking in amusement. Your belongings are likely being kept with security. Standard procedure for unexpected visitors. I need to contact the fleet, Peter said, suddenly serious. He tried to sit up again, his face contorting with pain. They need to know I'm alive, and I need my communicator to... What you need, Ciha interrupted firmly, is rest. Your recovery is unprecedented, but you're far from healed. Just let me stand up for a minute, he insisted, swinging his legs over the side of the bed despite his earlier claim of immobility. I feel fine. Just a headache. He tried to stand, but staggered, falling back onto the bed. Ciha moved quickly, her green hands pressing against his shoulders, forcing him to remain still. Listen, Peter Kowalski, she said, her silver eyebrows drawing together in a stern expression. I didn't spend 3 hours extracting blood from your brain just to watch you collapse on my floor. I will get your equipment for you after I've gone home and gotten some sleep. Until then, you will rest. Or I will test some of our sedatives on you to see which ones are effective on humans. Peter's eyes widened slightly, but there was a hint of amusement in them. Has anyone ever told you that you have a wonderful bedside manner, Doctor? Frequently, she replied dryly. Now rest. When he seemed ready to accept rest, she headed toward the door, turning back for one final warning. The drones will monitor your every move. If you try anything stupid, I'll be back within minutes, and I'll be considerably less pleasant than I am now. As she left the room, Ciha couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just become significantly more complicated. This human, this Peter Kowalski, and his inexplicable ability to heal from fatal wounds represented something unprecedented in her medical career. And, in her experience, unprecedented things on Arkrad rarely remain simple for long. The Planetary Defense Headquarters loomed against the evening sky. Its metallic walls gleamed with the last rays of Arkrad's setting sun. Unlike the warm, well-lit environment of the Medical Research Station, this building seemed designed to intimidate. All sharp angles, cold metal, and intentionally chilled air that made Ciha pull her medical coat tighter around her shoulders. She had been waiting for nearly an hour. The receptionist, a stern-faced Arcadian with unusually dark silver hair, had informed her that the officials who could authorize the release of the humans' belongings were occupied with matters of planetary security. Ciha was certain they were making her wait on purpose, a power play she had encountered before when dealing with government officials. Finding an uncomfortable chair in the corner of the austere lobby, Ciha pulled out her datapad. If they intended to waste her time, she would at least use it productively. She opened a secure communication channel to Crodo at the medical facility. His face appeared on the screen, his expression changing from neutral to surprised when he recognized her. Dr. Viridian? I thought you'd gone home to rest. I've already rested enough, she replied, keeping her voice low. How is our patient doing? Crodo's eyes flicked rapidly, a sign of excitement or agitation among Arcadians. It's remarkable. His neural activity has stabilized completely. The swelling has reduced by 60% since this morning. I've never seen anything like it. Has he been behaving himself? Surprisingly, yes. He's been asking questions about our medical technology, but hasn't attempted to leave his bed. Crodo leaned closer to his screen. What did you do, Ciha? What treatment protocol did you use? Ciha couldn't help but smile slightly. I didn't do anything special. Humans are just built different. They're fascinating creatures. Realizing she was speaking too loudly in the public space, she lowered her voice to nearly a whisper. We could likely spend decades understanding their immune system and self-repair mechanisms. The applications to our own medicine could be revolutionary. Crodo opened his mouth to respond, but his words were cut off as a heavy green hand suddenly descended over Kaya's datapad, rudely covering the screen. Startled, Kaya looked up to find two bulky Arcadian guards staring down at her. Their official uniforms bore the emblem of the defense military's elite security force, and their expressions were coldly professional. "Dr. Viridian," a voice came from behind them. "How kind of you to grace our humble security headquarters with your presence." The guards stepped aside, revealing a tall, imposing Arcadian male. His silver hair was styled in the traditional three braids of high government officials, and his dark green skin had the slight sheen that came with expensive cosmetic treatments. Minister of Defense, Tharok Varn, one of the most powerful individuals in the Arcadian government, smiled down at her with an expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Minister Varn," Kaya acknowledged, quickly shutting off her datapad. "I didn't expect to meet with someone of your stature." "And yet, here we are." His smile widened slightly. "You're the doctor who saved the human, are you not?" Kaya stood, refusing to remain seated while being loomed over. "I am." "Fascinating creatures, humans," Varn said, echoing her own words from moments ago. "Tell me, why exactly are you here, Doctor?" "I came to recover my patient's belongings," Kaya replied evenly. "His communication device, scanner, and other equipment. As his attending physician, That would be a bad idea," Varn interrupted, his tone still pleasant but with an unmistakable edge. "The human won't need his things where he's going." A chill ran down Kaya's spine that had nothing to do with the building's cold air. "And where exactly is that, Minister?" "A specialized research facility," Varn replied, gesturing for her to follow him away from the public lobby. Against her better judgment, Kaya complied, the two guards falling into step behind them. They entered a small conference room, windowless, with walls that she suspected were designed to block all forms of surveillance or communication. "Sit, please," Varn said, though it wasn't a request. Once they were seated across from each other at the sleek metal table, Varn continued. "Your discovery regarding the human's extraordinary healing abilities is one of great interest to the Defense Ministry. We believe studying this creature could lead to significant advancements, treatments for currently incurable diseases, enhanced healing for our soldiers, perhaps even methods to extend our natural lifespans." "You're planning to transfer him to a secret facility for experimentation?" Kaya stated flatly. Varn's eyes wince, amusement. "Experimentation sounds so primitive. We prefer comprehensive biological study. And yes, thanks to your excellent care and detailed medical records, we now understand what a valuable resource we have in our possession." A cold realization washed over Kaya. "You've been monitoring my medical examinations?" "Of course we have," Varn laughed, not bothering to deny it. "Did you think a non-Arcadian life form could crash land on our planet, be taken to our premier medical facility, and not be under constant surveillance? The neural scanners, the tissue analyzers, even the hovering drones, all of them feed data directly to our security systems." "That's a violation of medical privacy," Kaya protested, though she knew how hollow her words sounded. "Everyone understands how seriously the regime takes security," Varn replied, his tone suddenly harder. "Both internally and externally. Surely someone of your intelligence didn't believe otherwise." Kaya fell silent, her mind racing. She had been naive, focused solely on saving a life without considering the broader implications of what the human's unique physiology might mean to a government always seeking advantages. "I'd like to offer you an opportunity, Dr. Viridian," Varn continued, his voice softening again. "Your expertise would be invaluable in studying the human. Continue your research, but in our specialized facility. You'll have resources beyond anything available at your current position, and your career would benefit tremendously. The Central Chamber rewards those who contribute to national security." "And if I refuse?" "Why would you? This is a unique research opportunity." His expression remained pleasant, but Ciha understood the implicit threat. "Think of what we could learn. Think of the advancements." "What about the diplomatic implications?" Ciha asked. "Holding a human against his will could provoke a war with humanity. They might not be as technologically advanced as Arcadians in some areas, but they're numerous and, as we've seen, remarkably resilient." Varn waved a dismissive hand. "No one knows this human is here. His ship's distress signal can't travel faster than light. As far as Earth is concerned, he simply disappeared in deep space, a common enough occurrence in the dangerous business of interstellar travel." Ciha's mind raced through possibilities, each darker than the last. She had heard rumors, whispered stories, about what happened to those who opposed the will of the Central Chamber. Academics who disappeared after publishing controversial papers, journalists whose investigations into government activities ended abruptly, officials who retired unexpectedly after voicing opposition to new policies. "I need time to consider your offer," she said finally, choosing her words carefully. "We don't even know if the human won't drop dead at any time. Their biology is still largely unknown to us. It would be premature to make career decisions based on a single case study." It was a lie, delivered with all the clinical detachment she could muster. She had seen enough of Peter's recovery to know that, barring new injuries, he was likely to make a full recovery. But Varn didn't need to know that she was already certain of the human's vitality. Varn studied her for a long moment, his expert eyes seeking deception. "Very well," he finally said. "You have until tomorrow evening to make your decision. The human will be transferred the following morning, with or without your participation." "May I return to the hospital now?" Ciha asked, keeping her expression neutral. "Of course," Varn nodded, standing to indicate the meeting was over. As Ciha turned towards the door, Varn's voice stopped her once more. "Dr. Viridian, a word of advice. Having a hero complex is not good for one's health in these uncertain times." His tone shifted, becoming silkier. "But ambition can take you far." Ciha didn't respond, simply nodding before walking out, past the guards and through the lobby with controlled steps, and betrayed none of the turmoil inside her. It was only when she reached the outside air, the evening breeze cool against her face, that she realized how wildly her heart was beating. Her mind swirled with overlapping thoughts and emotions, fear, indignation, and a growing sense of responsibility toward her unlikely patient. The medical transport she had arrived in waited for her, its automated systems recognizing her approach and opening the door. As she settled into the seat and the vehicle began its journey back to the medical facility, Ciha considered her options. She could accept Varn's offer, continue her research under government supervision. It would be the safest choice for her career, her life even. And there was a part of her, the scientist, that was genuinely fascinated by the research potential. Or she could refuse, potentially facing consequences she didn't want to contemplate. But even if she declined the position, Peter would still be taken, still be studied, without someone advocating for his respectful treatment. There was a third option, one that she could barely bring herself to consider. She could help Peter escape, but that would make her a traitor to Arkrad, risking everything she had worked for, everything she was. As the medical facility came into view, its lights bright against the darkening sky, a heavy question weighed down on her. What would she tell Peter when she returned? He would ask about his belongings, expecting her to have retrieved them as promised. Instead, she would have to face him knowing what fate awaited him, knowing that in less than 2 days he would be transferred to a facility where he would likely spend the rest of his life as a research specimen. Or she could warn him. But to what end? A severely injured human, alone on an alien planet, against the full might of the Arcadian security forces, it would be giving him hope where there was none. As the transport came to a stop outside the medical facility's staff entrance, Ciha remained seated for a moment longer, her reflection staring back at her from the darkened window, her silver hair disheveled, her dark green face drawn with worry. "What's the right thing to do?" she whispered to herself, knowing full well there might not be a right answer, only choices with varying degrees of consequence. With a deep breath, she stepped out of the transport and headed inside, still uncertain what she would say when Peter inevitably asked the simple question, "Did you get my stuff?" Her answer, whatever it might be, would set in motion events that could change everything. For Peter, for herself, and perhaps for the relationship between their species. Peter Kowalski was getting used to alien hospitality. All things considered, it could have been worse. The medical bay was spacious and clean, with its strange blue-white lighting that seemed to eliminate all shadows. The bed was surprisingly comfortable, adjusting to his body in ways Earth technology hadn't quite mastered yet. The main drawbacks were the food. Gelatinous substances in various shades of yellow and green that tasted vaguely like overcooked vegetables, and of course, the hovering drones that seemed determined to invade every moment of his privacy. One of them was currently positioned about 2 feet from his face, its camera lens focused on him with an unblinking electronic stare. "You know, we could be friends if you just back up a little," Peter told the drone, which predictably didn't respond or adjust its position. He sighed and leaned back against the pillows. Overall, the Arcadians had been friendly enough. The medical staff checked on him regularly, seemingly fascinated by his rapid recovery. Several had even attempted conversation beyond medical questions, curious about Earth and humans in general. But it was the green doctor with silver hair, Ciha, that Peter was waiting for. She had promised to retrieve his equipment, and he was looking forward to teasing her a bit more about it. Then he'd thank her properly for saving his life, contact the human fleet to let them know he was alive, and leave this weird world for good. Another adventure for the memoirs he'd probably never write. The door to his room suddenly burst open, startling Peter from his thoughts. Ciha entered in a rush, her movements lacking the calmness he'd observed in her earlier. Her silver hair was slightly disheveled, and her dark green face bore an expression he couldn't quite read. "What happened?" Peter asked, immediately sitting up straighter. "Did you get my things?" Ciha didn't answer. Instead, she stopped beside his bed and stared at one of the monitoring screens with an intensity that made Peter uneasy. After a moment, she announced flatly, "I think we need to perform a full body scan." "What? Why? I feel—" Before he could complete his protest, Ciha was already disconnecting him from the monitoring equipment. She produced a wheelchair from a nearby alcove and, with strength that seemed excessive for someone handling a supposedly injured patient, forcefully transferred him into it. "Whoa, easy there." Peter winced as she secured him in the chair. "I'd like to keep the bones that aren't already broken, thanks." Ciha didn't respond, instead pushing the wheelchair toward the door and out into the corridor at a pace that felt more like an escape than a medical transfer. It was only when they were already moving through the sterile hallways, passing startled medical staff, that Peter found the strength to protest more seriously. "Doctor, I appreciate your enthusiasm for my health, but what the hell is going on?" His voice had lost its teasing edge, replaced by genuine concern. "I'm not going anywhere else until you explain what we're doing." When she still didn't respond, Peter reached down and manually locked the wheelchair's wheels, bringing them to an abrupt halt in the middle of the corridor. "I mean it," he said firmly. "Not another inch until you tell me what's happening." Ciha finally looked at him, really looked at him, her large eyes meeting his directly. Something in her composed exterior cracked, and her voice lowered to barely above a whisper. "They will take you somewhere and use you as a test subject," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. A droplet of moisture, a tear, Peter realized with shock, fell from her eye onto his hospital gown. "They'll make you disappear." The raw emotion in her voice struck him more deeply than her words. This wasn't some elaborate prank or misunderstanding. Whatever was happening, Ciha was genuinely terrified for him. His hands loosened their grip on the wheels, and the chair was suddenly in motion again, Ciha pushing him with renewed urgency down a corridor he hadn't seen before. As they moved, Peter's mind raced through possibilities. Who were they? Government? Military? Some shadowy alien research division? He'd encountered enough bureaucracy and power-hungry officials during his time in the Earth Fleet to know that some things were universal, including the capacity for cruelty in the name of advancement. But Ciha's tears, her obvious distress at his fate, that left no room for doubt. Somewhere inside, he knew she was risking something to save him, and, as naive as it might be, he decided to trust her. For now, she pushed him through a door that slid open automatically, revealing a room filled with communication equipment. An Arcadian male sat at a console, his head jerking up in surprise at their sudden entrance. "Dr. Viridian?" the technician said, clearly startled. "What are you—" "Shut up!" Ciha interrupted, her voice steady despite the tears that had fallen moments ago. "Establish immediate contact with the human homeworld." The technician's inner eyelids flicked rapidly as he looked from Ciha to Peter and back again. "I don't understand. Protocol requires authorization from—" "I said now!" Ciha's voice rose sharply. "This is a medical emergency. I am technically your superior, and you can say goodbye to your job if you don't obey me." The technician hesitated, then seemed to recognize something in Ciha's demeanor that convinced him of her seriousness. "Video communication is the only channel available for direct contact," he said, his fingers already moving towards the console. "Even better," Ciha replied. A large screen on the wall activated, displaying static at first, then resolving into the image of a surprised-looking human officer in an Earthfleet uniform. "This is Earthfleet Command," the woman on the screen said, her professional demeanor not concealing her surprise at receiving a direct transmission from what she clearly recognized as an unknown source. "Identify yourself." Before Peter could speak, Ciha stepped forward, her words pouring out in a torrent. "My name is Dr. Ciha Viridian of Arkrad. Your pilot, Peter Kowalski, crashed on our world after an encounter with Crodarian ships. He is alive and recovering well under my care." She gestured to Peter in the wheelchair. "But my superiors intend to transfer him to a secret facility for experimentation. They plan to make him disappear." The human communications officer's expression shifted from professional neutrality to alarm. Peter tried to interject, but Ciha continued, her voice growing more urgent. "If you don't hear from Peter again, it's because he's being used for experiments somewhere, or, perhaps, has already been killed." She turned to look at Peter, her eyes softening. "My burden is lifted. Whatever happens from now on, I've done all I could to save him." The person on the screen asked more questions, but Peter barely heard them. He was staring at Ciha, finally understanding the full weight of what she had just done. For him, a stranger from another world. 2 months later, the cell in the high tower of Arkrad's maximum security detention center was small but clean. Ciha lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. Unlike the other prisoners, she had been deemed too disruptive to be allowed access to the communal sun deck or exercise yards. No fresh air, no companionship, just endless isolation. She knew the real reason for her solitary confinement had nothing to do with being disruptive. It was the fallout from her decision 2 months ago, the interspecies scandal that had rocked not just Arkrad, but several neighboring systems as well. Did she regret saving the human and causing what news networks were calling the biggest diplomatic crisis of the galactic year? Absolutely not. The human fleet's immediate and forceful demands for Peter's return had sent shockwaves through Arcadian politics. Many powerful officials had fallen from grace alongside her, including Minister Varn himself, exposed for unauthorized surveillance and plans for illegal experimentation on a citizen of an allied species. The fact that she wasn't actually guilty of any crime under Arcadian law bothered her deeply. Her actions had been justified as saving a patient from unethical treatment, but the embarrassment she had caused the government required a scapegoat. So, here she was, sentenced to 30 years for endangering planetary security, while Peter had been safely returned to his people. At least now she could sleep as much as she wanted, she thought bitterly. Her days of helping others were gone for good. She was still staring at the ceiling when a tremendous explosion rocked the building. The wall of her cell burst inward, sending chunks of debris flying across the room. The noise left her ears ringing, and dust filled the air, stinging her eyes and lungs. Coughing and disoriented, Ciha used her prison uniform to wipe her eyes, trying to clear her vision. As the dust began to settle, a blurred bipedal shape formed against the bright light streaming through the new hole in her wall. After several more blinks, the shape resolved into a familiar figure. Peter Kowalski, suspended in mid-air outside her cell. He was hanging from a rope or cable that extended upward, out of her sightline. When their eyes connected, he said just 2 words. "Jump, and I'll catch you." Only then did her mind fully understand that Peter was being held by some sort of harness, and he wanted her to jump through the hole in her cell wall, stories above the ground, and trust him to catch her. Ciha took 1 step towards the ragged opening and froze as she noticed the dizzying height. The ground below seemed impossibly distant, the people and vehicles reduced to tiny dots. "I can't," she said, stepping back from the edge. "Remember the wheelchair?" Peter called back, his voice barely audible over the wailing alarms that had begun throughout the prison. "This isn't different. Trust me." Something changed inside Ciha at those words. A decision crystallized in her mind, and before she could second-guess herself, she was running toward the opening. She closed her eyes and jumped. For a moment, she felt weightless, suspended in empty air, nothing between her and the distant ground. Then came the impact. Not of hitting the ground, but of being caught by strong arms. She felt a firm grip she had never experienced before, securing her against the fall. When she opened her eyes, the rope was already being pulled upward, lifting them toward what looked like a sleek ship with some sort of stealth technology. Its outline seemed to waver and shift against the sky, making it difficult to focus on. "I didn't think humans had this sort of stealth tech," she commented, trying to sound casual despite her racing heart and the shouting of guards now visible in her destroyed cell below. "Good thing neither did your government," Peter replied with a grin. Still clinging to him as they ascended toward the waiting ship, she asked, "What happens to me now?" Peter laughed, a warm sound that somehow made their precarious position seem less terrifying. "Being welcomed and received as a hero on Earth, or protected by the Galactic Council. Those are the options you can choose." Noticing her surprise, he added, "Don't worry. If anything goes wrong, I'll save you again. No amount of prison breaks is enough to thank you for what you did." Ciha didn't reply. Instead, she simply rested her head against his arm and watched as the prison grew smaller below them, the wind rushing past as they rose toward freedom, and whatever the future might hold, a new life certainly awaited her.